In this video, I want to give you a brief overview of Chem 3B. Chem 3B is the introduction to organic and biological chemistry. It's kind of like taking two 9-week classes in one. During the first half of the semester, we'll be looking at organic compounds, focusing on the different functional groups you see listed here, and then we'll take a midterm written by the American Chemical Society. After the midterm, we will pick up talking about the functional groups in biological molecules. And when we talk about biological molecules like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, all of these contain the same functional groups that we see earlier in the semester. And so these biological molecules can undergo the same chemical reactions that we study earlier in the semester. So this material is cumulative on this half of the semester. I feel that's important for you to know going in that all of this material you see here will be used later in the semester. So what is organic chemistry? Organic chemistry originally got its name from the study of stuff that came from organisms. And so organisms are made out of organic compounds. But that's the old definition. The modern definition comes from the study of carbon, specifically the compounds of carbon where carbon is bonded to hydrogen. So you have to have carbon bonded to hydrogen to have an organic compound. Then you will have other non-metal elements such as nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, and any of the halogens. Halogens are in group 17, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine. If we look at this picture here, pretty much everything pictured is organic, including the cheese, bread, milk, like everything here. Even if we dive down deeper and the DNA that makes up these food substances is organic, the hormones, the proteins, the enzymes, the vitamins, all of those things are organic compounds. Even plastic is organic according to chemistry. The only thing that's obviously not organic in here is the glass. And the glass is made out of SiO2, which is not organic. So what's the difference between organic compounds and inorganic compounds? Inorganic means not organic. Organic compounds always exist as discrete molecules, which means that molecules are discrete clusters of atoms, and each molecule has the same composition in the substance. Same number of atoms in each molecule of that compound. Inorganic compounds can be molecular, like water is an inorganic molecular compound. But inorganic compounds can also exist as ionic compounds. Ionic compounds have alternating patterns of ions, cations and anions held together by strong electrostatic forces. And so these repeating patterns of ions just go on forever in all dimensions until you reach the edge of the sample. Between these molecules are intermolecular forces holding these molecules together. Molecular compounds always have a lower melting point or boiling point than ionic compounds because it's much easier to break apart an intermolecular force than it is to split apart an ionic compound. So molecular compounds always tend to have lower melting points and boiling points than ionic compounds. At room temperature, molecular compounds can be solids, liquids, or gases. But the solids are usually either really big molecules or have really strong intermolecular forces, or they're ionic. This slide kind of gives you an overview of some of the typical, it's a compare and contrast between an ionic compound like NaCl and a molecular organic compound. And so molecular compounds are always held together through covalent bonds. Ionic compounds are held together through ionic bonds, kind of in the name. And so a lot of molecular compounds exist as gases at room temperature. Ionic compounds are typically solid at room temperature, and you'll never find them as gases at room temperature. As I said on the previous slide, the boiling points and melting points are much lower than that of ionic compounds. And we will see lots of molecular compounds that are soluble in water, but this particular one is not. So I'm just going to write depends on functional group. And we'll get more into that when we get into our physical properties. So what are functional groups? Organic molecules are always classified by their functional groups. Functional groups are clusters of atoms on the organic molecules that really dictate what chemical and physical properties that substance has. So physical properties are things like boiling point and melting point and solubility, and chemical properties mean what chemical reactions will that molecule undergo. When you're looking to find a functional group on an organic molecule, you need to look for a heteroatom. Heteroatom means not carbon, not hydrogen. You can also look for a multiple bond, or sometimes both. And you really want to, like, when you're trying to find the functional groups on the molecule, sometimes heteroatoms share a carbon. If they're sharing a carbon, they're part of the same functional group. That's one functional group. But if you have this and this, they're not on the same carbon. Should have drawn my circle like that. So they're on different carbons, and so they're different functional groups. So if the OH and the double bond O are on the same carbon, then it's part of the same functional group. And if they're on different carbons, then they're different functional groups. Since we're really caring about just the functional group a lot of times, we'll use R to abbreviate the rest of the molecule that's not important for studying our chemical reaction. R means carbon something or other. So it always means carbon, but it's like the rest of the molecule that you're not interested in. And so if we had something like CH3OH, we could abbreviate the CH3 with an R in order to focus just on the alcohol functional group. These are the functional groups that you're expected to know this semester. I suggest that you make flashcards of these functional groups and begin trying to learn them as soon as possible. We will be covering them slowly throughout the semester, but the sooner you can learn to recognize them, really the better off you'll be. You don't need to know these ones on this figure. So what is biochemistry? Biochemistry is the study of chemical processes that occur within biological systems. And so this will include aerobic respiration, photosynthesis, and of course, metabolism of food. When we learn about biochemistry, we're really going to focus on the metabolism of food. And so we will be first learning about all of the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and even nucleic acids that exist in biological systems, looking at their structures, identifying the functional groups in these molecules so that we can predict their physical properties and what chemical reactions they will undergo.